Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. The other day I shared with you some of my favorite practical homeschooling tips for when you have a bunch of children different ages in your homeschool. So today I thought that I would share with you how we actually implement those little hacks that I told you about into our homeschool routine. And the first thing that I want to point out is that you don't ever want to try to model your homeschool exactly like someone else's because all families are different. The reason that I'm doing this is just to maybe give you some ideas on things that might work in your homeschool. But I would never actually expect you to try to do everything exactly like we do. So with that being said, I just want to remind you that I'm homeschooling 9 children this year. My kids that are being homeschooled are ages 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 13, 15, and 17. Yes, I had to do it on my fingers or I would have forgotten somebody. So I have 9 kids who are being homeschooled this year. And if you remember in the other video, I talked about grouping my kids. So I have my 4, 6, and 7-year-olds in my littles group. And then in my middles group, I have my 9, 10, 11, and 13-year-olds. And then in my teens, I have my 15 and 17-year-olds. And I know a lot of people, when they hear about grouping your kids, might get the impression that I've got different groups of kids working together at the same time, kind of like circle time, but it's really not like that at all. When my kids are grouped into separate groups, that generally means that they are the only group working at that time and that the other groups are off somewhere playing or doing their own thing, because that's how we do things in our house. So to start out our homeschool day, we usually around 9:30 will start straightening up the living room and dining room, just because it's nicer, you know, when you're doing school in a house that is not a wreck. If I know that we're going to be doing work in the kitchen that day, we will also go out and make sure that the kitchen is in order. Then around 9:55, I will turn on a song. Right now we're using Sing 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 by Chris Tomlin. And my kids know, and I will play it loud enough that even if they're upstairs, they can hear it. So when they hear that playing, they know that it's time to come downstairs, get their Bibles, and then come sit on the couch because we're getting ready to start. So after that song is over, it's usually around 10 o'clock by then, we will start out with devotions. And at this point in time, my 15 and 17-year-olds are still sleeping. They are late sleepers, and that's fine because they do their work later because they're mostly independent in their work. So at this point in time, when we're doing devotions, I have everyone from my 4-year-old to my 13-year-old. So I've got 7 kids right now. We do our devotions, and then after the devotions, we pray together. We each pick one person to pray for. Well, not all of us. I do tell the kids, if you don't feel like praying today, it's okay. I don't want to force my kids into it. But usually they will have someone that they want to pray for. So after that time, I will send my group of littles, my 4, 6, and 7-year-olds, upstairs to play. I expect them to play quietly while I'm doing school with the kids. It doesn't always work out that way. And there are several times a day that I have to scoot them back upstairs because they keep inching their way back down here. So I don't ever want to give anyone the impression that we have all this worked out perfectly and everyone always does exactly as they're supposed to, because no, it's not like that. So at this point in time, after they've gone upstairs and I have just my middles, so now it's my 9, 10, 11, and 13-year-olds, we will continue on reading the Bible together. We just read one verse at a time. Right now we're reading through the book of Matthew. So I will read one verse, and then the child sitting next to me will read a verse, and then the next child will read a verse, and we just keep going like that. We usually read between subheadings because some of the chapters can get to be pretty long. So we usually read between subheadings. After the Bible reading time, it is read aloud time. And we're reading Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. I used to let my kids fidget when I would do read alouds. You know, I would let them play with their Shopkins or play with Play-Doh, those sorts of things, because my kids really are the type of kids who they like to move. They really like to move all the time. And I know that I saw a lot of recommendations, you know, let your child fidget while you're reading. But what I found with my kids was that if I would let them fidget, I would ask them later what the book was about, or it would be their turn to narrate, and they would have no clue what I had been reading about. It's like they couldn't do two things at once. They couldn't fidget and listen. Their attention has to be like entirely on me. So that's why I've actually taken fidgeting out of our read aloud time. But you have to remember, though, is that we've been doing read alouds for years. So this is something that they have actually been able, they've had time to adjust to it. It's not like we started doing read alouds one day and then they were able to sit perfectly still. You know, even now, years later, my kids still can't sit perfectly still, and I might have to read like a page over again because I have a feeling that none of them were actually listening. So I'm not going to say that that is perfect either. Nothing in my homeschool is perfect, but it works for us because there is no perfect homeschool. So just remember that. So when I'm reading read aloud, I will read a few pages at a time. I will stop and I will choose a child to narrate. And then I will read a few more pages. I will stop and I will have the next child narrate. And I do that until all 4 children have had a chance to narrate our read aloud for the day. After read aloud is German. We use Duolingo for that in case you're interested, just because it's free and it's really nice. The lessons are only about 5, maybe 10 minutes long, usually about 5 minutes long. The kids can all work on that together. They just sit on the couch with my laptop, and that gives me some time, you know, to take a little bit of a breather, drink some coffee, get the next lesson prepared for the day. So after German comes our unit study time. And I just want to point out that all the things that we've done so far, we start our school around 10 o'clock. By this time, it is usually only between 10:35 and 10:45. This does not take long at all. And remember, I've got 7 kids here. So by this point, we've already done devotions, Bible, read aloud with narrating, and German. And by this time, it's usually, say, 10:45 on average. So 45 minutes to do all of that. So at this time, we start our unit study together, and we usually will only do 2 unit study activities per day because that's the attention span that my kids have. That is what keeps their interest the most. And, you know, we've adapted. There were times that I did 4 unit study activities a day. Then we moved it down to 3. Now we're down to 2. And that's really the lowest that I'll go, but because and it's fine because it really does work with our family. So we do 2 unit study activities per day. And a lot of times, if I know that we're doing something that my littles would either enjoy or something that they would actually understand, I will invite them to come and do these activities with us. For example, the other day, the kids watched a video on, what was it on? Erosion. So I called my littles down and had them sit and watch the video on erosion also. So I hear my littles up there yelling right now. It's like they knew I was talking about them. So yeah, so I will have them sometimes work with the littles, usually not. Usually it is still just the middles doing the unit study. At this point, after the unit study, this is when our one-on-one time starts for the middles, the 9, 10, 11, and 13-year-olds. I do one-on-one time with each of them for math because they really they feel better having me sit right next to them while they are doing their math. They're just not confident in their math skills right now. So that is what I do. I do one-on-one time for math. So while I am working with one child for math, the other children will either be doing some form of notebooking, journaling, copy work, or silent reading. So they all have something to do in this time while they're waiting to do math with me. Now, my 9-year-old at this point is not really doing notebooking of any kind yet. He's still doing phonics or teach your child to read in 100 easy lessons. So sometimes he does have to wait for me to do the reading lesson with him. But for the most part, that's what they do while they're waiting for math. Once they're done, they're finished for the day. That's it. And by this point, it's usually between 12 and 12:30 in the afternoon. I'm going to say probably closer to 12:30, although there are days that we start around 12. So 12:30, we take a lunch break, and then at 1 o'clock, we all start doing chores because my husband is usually home from work around 1:50. So we like to have everything put away as best as possible before he comes walking through the door and sees books and papers everywhere, which, yeah, they do come back out after he's home, but at least he walks in the door and it's not so bad. So usually then around 2 o'clock is when I will start with my littles. My littles are mainly interest-led learning. what I do with them is I will do a read aloud with them. And remember, they are 4, 6, and 7-year-olds. I am just doing picture books with them right now. I have already done Magic Tree House books with them, but for the most part, we do picture books. And we still have some fidgeting issues, but they're little, so that's to be expected. They'll get used to it. So after their read aloud, same thing with them. I do one-on-one time with them. So while one child is working with me on either phonics or reading and then math, the other two will just play quietly until it's their turn. And then they just take turns. And so they have that one-on-one time with me also. That is the only structured work that I do with my 4, 6, and 7-year-olds, because at this point, they are curious enough that they are always doing things that they are learning from. And if they are not joining in with their older siblings on the unit study activities, you can bet that they're, making paper dolls or painting or making things out of clay or playing outside. So I'm really only concerned with the basics with them for now. Learning how to read, how to write, and do math. Those are my main concerns right now, and I do allow them a lot of time to do interest-led learning. So once they're done, we are usually finished, I'm going to say, between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. Now, when we get done at 2:30, it's because my older kids got done at 12, and I was able to start my littles at 12 o'clock instead of after lunch. So it really depends. But usually we're done between 2:30 and 3. I would say the latest that we're usually done is around 3:15. That is it for all 7 of those kids. So remember, we start at 10, and then we take a break from 12:30 to 2, and then we're done usually at the latest by 3:15 for 7 kids. Now moving on to my teens, my 15 and 17-year-old, I will usually, and actually I do this with my younger kids too. I have a whiteboard in the living room, and I write down what they're going to be doing for the day, and they like to go up and erase it as it gets done. It's kind of like they're just checking it off. It shows them what they're accomplishing, and a lot of times they'll bicker over who gets to erase the next one. So they really like that, and actually my high schoolers like that too. So around lunchtime usually, since my high schoolers don't usually get up until lunchtime, I will write down their work for the day on the whiteboard. And since they work mainly independently, I really don't have to do a whole lot with them. I just have to maybe here and there explain some directions more clearly to them, or if I have something specific in mind that I want them to do, for example, nature study or photography, I might tell them, hey, before you leave, I want you to try to do this, and I'll tell them that. For the most part, though, they are really doing their work independently, and I allow them to do this work whenever they choose to do it, as long as it is done that day. Now, a lot of times my 17-year-old, he likes to go over to my mother's house because my 24-year-old lives at my mom's house because he has his own room there. So my 17-year-old, he will go over there a lot of times to hang out with his older brother. So when he does that, he does have to have all of his schoolwork done that he does independently. Then he has to come back because the rest of the work that I actually need to help them with has to happen in the evening when things have settled down a bit and the kids have quieted down and it's not so crazy at this point in time. So at 7 o'clock is when I actually do a read aloud or some type of devotional with my teens. And this read aloud is always something focused on the Bible, if it is not a devotion. So that's what I do first. After that, I help my daughter with her algebra, and then I help my son with his algebra. They're both working on the same book right now, just because my son decided that he wanted to start algebra all over again. This is his senior year. He didn't technically have to do a math at all this year because where we live, you only need 3 credits of math, and he already has those. But he didn't feel comfortable in algebra yet, so he decided to just start over in algebra and do it all over again. So they're around the same place in algebra, but my daughter, she really likes to have me to herself when she does her algebra, so she is really against working with her brother for it. So that's what I do. I do that one-on-one with them. Occasionally, they are also both doing biology, which they do together. And there may be a time that I have them watch a video. For example, today they're going to be watching a video. And that will usually not happen until 9 o'clock after the kids are in bed. So a lot of times their work is not getting done until nighttime, like all of it, I should say. And that's okay with me because, like I said, as long as they get it done, I am perfectly fine with that. So that is what our typical day looks like. Now I'm going to say Fridays do look a little bit different. We have a little bit of a lighter schedule on Fridays because I want to put some cushion time in there in case there's any work that has to be made up, in case there's something we didn't get to during the week that I really wanted to. And also, I was just thinking about, my kids aren't happy about this, but I was thinking about making Friday a bit of a clean day where we actually focus on one room each Friday, just because I'm getting at the point where I'm just like, because I need some organization in my house and I don't have it right now. So I'm thinking about that. I'm not sure about that yet. But anyway, that is how our homeschool routine works with 9 kids. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. If you have any tips that you would like to give others for homeschooling multiple children, feel free to leave that too. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to subscribe, go ahead and press that subscribe button. And I hope you have a great day.